Well, that's the point, that this is even more important than the Michigan game, so that's pretty important.
So, well, for once, we would agree with you.
That's a very good answer.
Somebody with some Notre Dame stuff on their wall.
So see this man right here? Guess how old he is.
You can see him right there. See him?
Yep.
There's John Fitzpatrick. Gene. Hey, Gene.
They can't see us. Hit that button.
Hi, Gene.
Right
Hi,
there.
Gene. How are you?
Hey, guys.
Hi. Gene D'Agostino.
Who's this? Jessica. Who's Jessica?
Jessica is the president.
Okay. Cool.
Hi, John. Thanks for joining.
Hey.
They don't have that. Finally.
Okay. We get a lot of people coming.
Jim Spagnuolo. There's Karen. There's Jim. There's Jim. Kids. Okay. Wait for them to, yes. No, you wait for them to talk. Oh, Pat Sarb. Oh my gosh. Did you know him, Pat Sarb?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Somebody's saying hi to you, Mr. Anhut.
Hey. Who's Hurley? Katie Hurley. Holy smokes.
Wow, you know that name?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Anhut, you know
Yes.
Dr. Spagnola?
Yep. Hi. We're waiting for your picture to come on there.
I don't know if it'll come on. This is Jim Spagnola.
Right. Hi, Jim.
How are you?
Jim is talking to you, but
I'm great. I don't know what's.
But your daughter's in the Detroit one.
Yeah. Whoops.
he's trying to talk to you.
Who's that, Chris?
Pat Sarb. Do you remember? I remember the Sarbs.
Who's that? This is Pat.
Hi, Pat.
I can't tell who's talking.
It's Chris Anhut. Are you Mike's brother?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I remember Mike.
You're one Sacred Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mike was class of 72, and I'm class of 76.
Okay,
Mike George.
Mike George.
Greetings, how are you?
Goodness.
Michael George. See,
I'm here.
Michael George, how are you?
Hello, Chris, how are you?
Good.
You're
Johnny's
looking very
friend,
dapper there.
Mike George.
Hey.
There's Jim, Mike George.
Indeed.
Yeah, Mike, it's great to see you.
Good deal. I can't miss this.
Shut up.
Joe's iPad. I don't know who that is. No, what?
Ready to go.
Nope. Pretty soon.
Yeah.
Too many people are not seen. Yeah.
Jim Spagnuolo.
Wonder why we can't be seen.
Put your video on. Who's that?
So if anybody's
Mike.
having a hard time
Hello.
with their backgrounds, put the light
Very
on the
neat.
other side of your computer and not behind you, and then and turn some lights on.
That.
Chris Gregg.
Mhm.
John, there's John. Hi, John.
Oh, I see Pat.
Good evening.
Hey, John. Hi, Chris.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Who's this? There's John.
John Morbeck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, Johnny.
Good to see you. Hello.
Able to talk.
Not much.
Mentioned him earlier, Dick Kramer.
Hmm.
Earlier.
I don't know how to get you on.
Jessica, you got a pretty good crowd going here.
We got pretty good. Yeah, I think we're gonna have some more. We had people sign up ahead of time,
Wow.
so we still had about. I think we're still expecting more.
Yeah, give it a couple of minutes.
Here's Mike Flanagan coming on. Deb.
Say something. Like, how can I get my picture on?
Roderick.
Here's John. Yeah.
Mike Flanagan. Hi, Mike Flanagan. Right there.
I like the beard, Mike. Like the beard.
Hey, John.
Where's you? Where's you?
Anthony About. Oh my God, Anthony About.
They can't get all the pictures. There's too many.
Mary Beth Dylan Butler.
Mike Flanagan.
That's what's her name.
There's Mike. Look at Mike's on. Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
Brian Broderick.
Yep. Yep.
You got a
Brian.
full house?
Hi.
Yeah.
You just said Brian Broderick.
That says Anthony About.
You a football player?
Oh,
I don't recognize the name, no.
see his face. I haven't seen him in a long time. Anthony About, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing? Good to see you. Okay. Okay.
I wanted to see if our speaker remembers any abouts.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Had enough of them.
There's enough of us, yep.
Bottom left, did not have a cross.
Unmute. I got unmute. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, right there.
Say something.
I'm Joe's iPad, but I lost my slide, I guess. I don't have a picture.
Yeah, turn the camera on.
Ann Arbor Club, class of 61, live in Brighton.
How do you turn the camera on?
Wow.
On the lower left usually.
They're asking over there.
Down here.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. Anybody look familiar there?
No.
All right, we'll give it another minute in case we have some more joiners. So we'll give it one more minute.
I don't know where it is. Tell him your daughter's supposed to stay. Be in here. Maureen's coming, wasn't she? Yeah, she said she was.
She hasn't come yet.
What say?
Yeah.
My daughter Maureen
Gil.
should be here soon. Maureen Gill, she lives in Bloomfield. She
Oh.
might help me find the picture.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, who's that? That's her dad? Who's her dad?
Yes. Yes.
Maureen's dad.
Yes, I'm Maureen Gill's father.
Okay, and where are
And
you?
my,
Who's the, oh,
Wife Beverly.
yeah, we know Maureen really
Joe
well.
Blake.
Doing anything.
Okay.
All right, well, we will get started. There, we might have some more joiners as time goes on, but we would just really want to thank you all for coming to this really special occasion where we all get to hear all the wonderful stories from our friend, John Anhut. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we'll just introduce John and get to it. So John is our local Notre Dame Club of Detroit Gold Star, graduated many, many years ago from the university, and has had such a wonderful life that we are excited to hear all about. My name is Jessica Roman. I'm current president of Notre Dame Club of Detroit, and I met John at our 2018 UND night, and I was so impressed with him. I wanted to have my picture taken with him. I was so, it was so obvious his passion for Notre Dame. Obviously, he's here at an event on a weeknight, dressed up, and it was just fantastic. I felt really honored to meet him. And then I found out, of course, who he really was. That he was president of our Notre Dame Club of Detroit in 1954. That he was our Man of the Year in 1964. And we are just so delighted. We've been planning this for a long time, that it's finally here where you can share your story. So I'm going to
It just isn't working.
introduce his daughter, Chris Moravec, who's our board member. Chris is going to introduce her dad.
Okay, hi. Well, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce my father, John Anhut, class of 44. I'm class of 74, and you know, he passed his love of Notre Dame on to many of us in the family, and I'm just gonna let him talk. And my brother Jim is also on today from Atlanta, Georgia.
I don't
And
know
he's
why
gonna
I'm
help
not getting any sound.
with a little of help with also guiding him through some of the questions and the what do you say, the slides. So there you go, Dad.
All right, so we thought we'd talk from the beginning. So go ahead, Jim. Or John.
Dad, I'm going to help you through some of these slides, but more importantly, Jessica, I want to, on behalf of our family, thank you for giving my father this opportunity to share his life with him and his love for Our Lady's University. We are super proud of our father, and just it's pure joy to have him share his
That's
story
mute.
with
That's
you.
mute.
So, Dad, take us back to 1923 and a little tour of the city of Detroit and where you went to high school.
First, I want to congratulate Jesse for doing this project. I'm the class of 44, and I could be the last of the class. There are not many of us left. But anyhow, I was born, as I say, in 1923. That time we lived in Detroit, Michigan at 3rd Avenue and Taylor and 3rd Avenue. I went to a grade school called Crosman Grade School, which is still there. It's over at Hamilton and Claremont. I always remember the woman who was in charge of it. They used to say, "Oh, Miss McGregor jumped in an inkwell and came out dry," and the Board of Education called her a fool because she was the principal of Crosman School. I stayed there until the 5th grade when we moved 100 Longfellow, which is up in the Boston, Edison area. And I started Blessed Sacrament Grade School. Went there through the 8th grade. The best experience I had there was that the sister in charge of the 8th grade, Sister Ludmilla, was fantastic. She did everything, she ran everything, and she liked me, which was wonderful. I became a patrol boy, and during that experience, my father, who, by the way, was a disciplinarian, he lived in discipline, believed in it. And I went down to the Fisher Theater one Saturday with a friend of mine, and he always had money to go to the theater and buy a candy bar. And it got to me, and finally I said to him, "Brad," I said, "how come you always have money for a candy bar?" He said, "Well, my father gives me an allowance." I said, "What?" He said, "An allowance." I couldn't wait for that, waited for the right occasion. And I said to my father one day, I said, "You know, Brad always has money for a candy bar, and he has an allowance. How come I don't get an allowance?" Well, my father said, "Well, his father's a doctor, he can afford it." I said, "Well, they took care of that." But finally, he ended up by saying, "Well, go out and earn some money." Well, I did. I went out and I got a paper route. The Detroit News. In those days, we entitled 2 editions of the paper, the home edition and the Wall Street edition. And my route was on Claremont Avenue from Hamilton to Woodward. I had 93 customers. And my father then got interested in what I was doing. It was 1937, if that rings a bell with you.
Go in the basement with all your stuff.
We had the sit-down strikes. Remember, the King of England at that time gave up for Wally Simpson, I guess it was, which were all extras, which we had to publish too. So anyhow, my father said, "How are you doing on collections?" I had one woman who was behind on collections, and he said, "Well, who's this? What's that?" I said, "Well, she comes to the door with the bra and panties." My father said, "Give her 2 more weeks." So anyhow, I learned all about that, finally got through grade school, and Sister Ludmilla gave me a scholarship to Catholic Central for the first year. And I went for the first year to Catholic Central. And then the issue.
Hey, Chris, somehow Dad's on mute.
I muted him accidentally. Let me see. Hang on.
I had my thing on mute. No, I mean, I had the sound off.
Chris, run your cursor over the over his picture, and you should be able to unmute. There should be a little blue box will come up.
They muted John.
Jessica, can you unmute everybody?
That's what I was trying to do. Where do
Okay.
I unmute everybody? I'm sorry. Hang on. Participants. Why can't I?
Yeah, there's the blue box that came up.
I'm sorry. Mute all. That's called to unmute. Okay, here we go. Then she should be able to unmute now.
Say something, Chris.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
There you go.
all
Great.
right. So where did he
So,
stop
so,
off
all
at?
right, so Dad, so you got kicked out of Catholic Central, and you had to go to a military. So explain that to everybody. How did that happen?
He said you didn't get kicked out of Catholic. Your father. Tell him why you went to. Tell him why you went to the military academy.
I could have gotten
so I heard you got
Catholic
kicked out.
Central by Father Jim Martin, if any of you remember those days. When he taught Latin, he walked down the aisle and all he did was whack you on the head, say, "Get with it." Finally, discipline took over, and a couple of chaps came to our farm one day when we were there in the summertime, 2 colonels. And they said they were representing a military academy over in Chicago. It was an honor military school, and they needed a certain number of students to qualify for government help. Before it was over, my father had agreed to send me to the military school. Well, military school was quite an experience. In those days, a lot of the old Capone gang in Chicago had put their children and everything into the military school to keep them safe. My first friend was a little guy named Tony Schiavone. And I never forget, his father was discovered on the bottom of Lake Michigan the first week I met him with a couple of cement blocks around his feet. That was the makeup. And then we had great football teams, and because we were in a prep school, we used to have ringers like you see today in college who would come to play at Morgan Park. One of them was a fellow named Angelo Fosco. And Angelo, his father was the head of the subway workers in Chicago. His brother's name was Chopper. I always said to him, I said, how come your brother's name is Chopper? He says, I'll show you at the next time they come to bring me a bushel of fruit. Well, when I went with him to see that episode, and he opened the trunk of the car, and there's a bushel of fruit and a submachine gun next to it. So I found out what they meant about Chopper. Well, when I would go home and regale my mother with those stories, she would have a heart attack. She was very, very Catholic, very religiously involved, and she made up her mind that I was going to end up going to a Catholic school. I finally graduated from Morgan Park, and then it came to the issue of what Catholic school would I go to? Well, others said Georgetown, somebody said Boston College, Holy Cross, and Notre Dame. The minute they mentioned Notre Dame, I remembered my Uncle Lou and my Aunt Mary. And my Uncle Lou had at one time been the sports editor for the Columbus, Ohio Dispatch. And he took me, I ended up one afternoon listening to a football game between Notre Dame and Ohio State, in which a great player by the name of Andy Pilney did almost everything that day except score the winning touchdown. He'd blown out a knee or something of that nature. And then of all things, somebody named Shakespeare came up and threw a winning pass, a chap named Wayne Miller, and Notre Dame won the game. And that just took care of me. I wanted to go to Notre Dame.
So Dad, you entered Notre Dame in a very tenuous time in the history of our country. So tell us a little bit about that experience and that, matriculating into Notre Dame in 1940, and then the program that allowed you to then, move forward to the U.S. Navy.
Okay. Our freshman class at Notre Dame was one of the largest Notre Dame had ever had. It was so large that they couldn't house all the students. And it got to the point that the only way they created room for the students was that they went into Carroll and Bronson halls, use bed linens, ward off, give you a cot, and ward off the area with bed linens. In fact, one of my good friends, John Lynch, who went with me, ended up there. And the only thing he had a cot. He had the bed linens around and place to put his trunk under his bed. We also, in order for them to house the students, put some of them down into the Oliver Hotel in South Bend. So those fellows really had it pretty good. They lived in the hotel until they could be accommodated. Then I was there, and I have to tell you, the rules were tough. We went to chapel in the morning. We were allowed to stay out till 10 in the evening. If we were real good, once in a while, we could go downtown into South Bend till midnight. But the rector of the call had to give you permission. And the favorite spot was a place called Spaghetti House. Okay, Chrissy.
Spaghetti.
Oh, no, Rosie's.
Rosie's. Okay.
Rosie's Italian Steakhouse. For 25 cents, if we were good, we got spaghetti and the beer. But other than that, we were pretty well contained. We had a campus cop, name was McCall. He knew everything that was going on, so he had no choice of ever getting out of line. But fortunately, at that time, I met a fellow named Bob Fisher. Bob Fisher, he was on the Gold Coast. He lived in Dom Hall. Dom Hall, he had a private room, even had a wash basin and everything in the room. And he lived in Detroit, became a great friend of mine. We became buddies, and fortunately, I had good marks. In those days, if you had good marks, you got your choice of what hall you would live in the next year. Fortunately, I was able to get into a suite in Lyons Hall. I never forget, it was right over the entrance. Father Rabbit Kelly, we called him, was the prefect, and we were right over his office. Everything went well, so Fish and I, one day, recruiters were all coming into Notre Dame because there was still a feeling that war was in the offing. So Bob and I went over to the old field house to talk to recruiters. One was a Navy V5 pilot recruiter. We were very interested, intrigued by him. Told us all about everything. He said, now run around the track, which was inside the hall there. We'll check you out. He checked us out. He said, well, you're okay. He said, how old are you? We said, you're underage. Parents have to agree to this. Bob and I got talking to each other, and I said, well, I tell you what, Bob, I'll sign your father's name. You sign my father's name. Well, that's what we did. Here we are with V5. And then a little while later, we're downtown in South Bend, gone to a movie, went into a Cunningham's drugstore to have a sandwich and a Coke. Something called Pearl Harbor came over. And I looked at Bob and I said, oh my God, wait till my father gets hold of this. I won't even want to go home again. So we said, what do we do now? Fortunately, the prefect of discipline at that time, Father Burke, who was a native Detroiter, was on board. And I said, well, I'll go over and talk to him. Fortunately, I did. He was very conciliatory. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. Well, he was able to get us moved from V5 to V7 from the pilot's program to the main officer's program. I ended up in the V7 program. Then one thing led to another. We got into this speed up program for the points and everything, and I ended up going around the clock to school. I went into summer school and everything. Then I got called into the Navy. I was the first 7 in my group to get called. I was sent to Tower Hall in Chicago for training. Tower Hall was right by the water tower in Chicago. The building we were in, which was interesting, had been a women's dormitory. So you can imagine there was a lot of shifting around that had taken place in that building. Fortunately, because I had been in the military school, I knew the port of arms, the coat of arms, how to work and everything. And I became an officer in charge of my platoon. Well, ultimately, they called us 90-day wonders. It was a wonder you got out in 90 days. But we did get out. Prior to getting out, we got some opportunity to call what we'd like to branch or what we'd like to do as an officer. Well, I tried for submarines and I lost the compression test. I tried for UDT, which was underwater demolition work. Didn't get that. Finally, somebody said, well, you should try out for amphibs. I said, well, amphibs, what's that? Well, you'll find out. Well, I made that. Hey, we got discharged, came home, and I got assigned to Little Creek, Virginia. On the way to Little Creek, I met a priest on the train. I never forget him. He said, oh, you'll love Little Creek. Little Creek, it's wonderful. Well, when we got there, it was colder than really be damned. She logged in at the gate, and the sergeant at the gate or whoever it was said, oh, you're in Quonset hut so-and-so. We proceeded to the Quonset hut. I got in, and my God, it was cold. I said, Jesus, they had a little pot-bellied stove in the middle, which wasn't working. How do these fellows stay warm? Well, I went to one fellow's sack, pulled back the sheet, and he was dressed in his foul weather gear. That's how he stayed warm. But anyhow, we finally went through about 2 months of that training. Then I got sent to Fort Pierce, Florida. A real transition because the weather was beautiful. Got down there and went through all that training. Got shipped back again to Norfolk and then sent to the South Pacific. Well, when I got aboard the ship, I got aboard a troop transport, and they assigned me to an amphibious group, which I stayed with for almost a year and a half. We worked 7 operations, worked from Indian all the way through Iwo Jima. Prior to that, I went aboard the ship and I went into the navigator's room and I looked at the charts. And all the charts that we were using, they were dated 1915. They were ones that had the old U.S. fruit lines and everybody had used, going from the Hawaiian Islands to the States and things of that nature. I said, well, this is crazy. This will never work. Well, the next thing I knew, I was sent to a carrier, and I was introduced to an admiral by the name of Nimitz. He had a petty officer on duty with him. He said to me, I give you some advice. Keep your eyes and your ears and your bows. Boy, that's the best advice I ever heard from anybody in my life. Still very apropos.
So Dad, so that's advice that's been shared with many of us in the family over all of these years. And you know, I want to try to tie the military experience together with all that you learned at Notre Dame in an accelerated program. You were the president there. Somewhere along the way, I hope somebody asked the question if you ever met Coach Leahy when you were there. But let's move on to, let's get on to law school. What happened? So after Notre Dame, you came on back to Detroit after the service. Actually, came back to the city of Detroit and started attending law school, right?
Okay, thanks, Jim. When I came back from the service, they had the GI Bill, which of course would allow us to go to continue our educations. 6 of us got together at a restaurant called Schweitzer's, which was down just below the UD Law School. They had great sauerbraten, by the way. We were all talking and trying to decide what we should do. And finally, one of the chaps said, well, UD Law School is right across the street there. Why don't we go to law school? Well, that day, all 6 of us had decided to go to law school. I might tell you this, all 6 of us graduated. Some of them you may have known, Harry Mountain, Dick Garrett, and a lot of those fellows. And when I got out, I finally graduated. It took me 5 years to get through because I was in business, running some hotels, running 3 to be honest about it. And we had the Botsford, we acquired the Botsford in that time in 1991. And I had my hands full. Plus I had gotten married and we had started a family. When I finally got out of law school, and it's rather apropos to today because my last course was constitutional law. And I aced it of all things. I often say I got the ace because Prof. Denowitz was sick of seeing me in the law school. But I got out. My father, who was an attorney, said, well, you're a smart guy now. I'll show you how the law is practiced. He said, go over to Judge Joe Gillis and his court man will give you an assignment. Well, they did. I went over. I got this assignment. It turned out that the chap who was in charge was in for carrying a concealed weapon. He was still in jail. I went to visit him. Then ultimately I found everything he told me was a lie. And I spent a lot of time on it. I finally came over and confronted him and said, well, he looked at me and said, what are you, a goddamn detective? No, but I said, you convinced me I don't want to practice law. I figured I was making 85 cents an hour or something on the assignment. So I stayed in the business.
So what did
there? A lot of great
what
things.
did Notre Dame teach you about being in business and starting your very successful business career? And how did it prepare you for your business career? So how did Notre Dame
one, it taught me I had to study, work my tail off, and listen to good professors and do my best.
I mean, if I could add in, I would say, having been a mentee of yours throughout my career, I would say that I'm sure that Our Lady's University planted this notion of building solid and enduring relationships come and play spades or pay spades in the business space, and especially this notion of serving others.
No doubt about it. I loved everything. Loved everybody. All of us at Notre Dame were almost on a common ground. We had no fraternities or anything of that nature. So my first roommate was an engineer. His father had been a ship's captain of Matson steam lines. Had saved all his money just to send the boy to college. And I respected that. I said everybody that was there, they had good feelings and love for Notre Dame.
So tell us, Dad, a little bit. I asked you about Coach Leahy earlier, but I certainly remember you, and as do all of your children. Your love for Notre Dame football, and a role that you played in recruiting various players onto the team. And this one photo of you looking over the green field there is at Harrison High School back in 2017. I happened to be attending that game with you. In that, given that I'm a graduate from Harrison High School, and you were very enamored by a young player on the field at that time. But tell us a little bit about your role in bringing Jerome Bettis and a couple of the other more well-known players to the Notre Dame gridiron.
Number one, we had a chap in our club, a graduate of Notre Dame by the name of John Pinelli. John Pinelli had been a fullback for May back in the glory years. He came to Detroit to play football for the pro football. He got very involved, and he opened a business over on 8 Mile Road, a heavy machinery business. He used to come to the inn for lunch very often. And one day he was having lunch, and he said to me, how about doing me a favor? I said, what's that? He said, there's a kid over on the east side. His name is George Gedeke. He's really supposed to be good. Would you do me a favor and go over and see him? It was at St. Gregory on the east side. I went over, and I never forget, I met the coach. Into the coach, and he got some film on this boy. The coach looked at him, he said, hell, we can't afford uniform. What do you mean film? And that boy can play anywhere in the country. Unfortunately, we got Gedeke, and that was my start. With that, from there on in, Pinelli always would get hold of me and we'd have meetings. And fortunately, I had met Era Parstigan and his assistant here by the name of Paul Schultz. And they stayed with me at the inn when they came to the Detroit area. One day, Paul Schultz said to me, he said, have you ever heard of St. Martin de Porres? I said, yes, I've heard of it. I've heard a lot of it. They play good football. They're not in the top Catholic league, but they're very good. So he said, well, he said, there's a kid over there that Michigan's looking at. How about, would you go over and take a look at him? I got our local coach, Ron Howell, who was the head coach at North Farmington High School, to go with me, and we went to see a night game that the Porres was playing. Well, we went in, it was raining, it was a bad night, but I got to sit on the bench. Coach, I'll never forget him. You'd think he was Jesus Christ, to be honest about it. All these kids all just came a line to him. He said to me, why are you here? I said, well, I'm here to see. He said, well, you should look at that number 5. He's only a junior, but he's a comer. I said, well, what's his name? His name is Rodney Culver. I said, Rodney Culver. Well, one thing led to another. I followed up on Rodney Culver. I got to the principal of St. Martin de Porres School, talked to her, and she said, he's the best student we've ever had. He's so good. And in the summer, he goes out to Cranbrook for extra classes. Well, she then told me it was just Thanksgiving was on the way. She said, you know, our teachers here are very underpaid, and they're up against it and all that. And Thanksgiving is here, and we sure need some help. I had a good friend at that time who was in the poultry business. Owenstein Poultry Paint. something in Cayman chicken. And I called good old Max, and he said, yeah, what do you want now? I told him the story about St. Mark de Porres. He said, how many are over there? I said, I don't know. Well, the next day I got a call from the good nun thanking me for all the turkeys they had got. But old Max, he was great. Talk about a good Jewish guy who was very democratic. He was it. But Rodney went to Notre Dame. And I am sure some of you know the story. He became a star. He became the starting fullback. Jerome Bettis was at that time a freshman. Played the great school of Michigan, Jim Girardi. This one day, we had a back called Rocket Ishmael. That day it was raining. And Bo decided to leave the field wet. You can figure that out. And they kicked off, the first kickoff went to the Rocket. And the Rocket ran it all the way back for a touchdown. The blocker on each play, he ran two of them in succession back for. There's a chap named Rodney Culver. Number 5 was leading the block. Culver hit a man on the one play so hard he broke his arm. But anyhow, Culver then went on to when Bettis began to become the fullback, Rodney became halfback. But he graduated. And then a horrible thing happened. He went down in the Florida on a trip, and the plane crashed in the Everglades.
Yeah,
killed.
that was clearly a sad moment.
They had two daughters. I'll just give you a little vignette. You may know Rocket Ishmael adopted the two daughters. It's a story I'm sure you know about. But that, in my mind, was the best recruiting job I ever did.
So Dad, a moment ago, you opened the door for me. You talked about Michigan, and there's a couple of U of M grads in our family, but more importantly, you've got 2 of your 5 children went to Notre Dame, 4 of your 8 grandchildren went to Notre Dame, we're all very proud of you, as you know. Jessica, why don't you roll on the next slide real quick? I do want to allow people an opportunity to ask my dad some questions. Again, Catherine, the 3 Moravec children, Chris's children on the left-hand side, all Domers, hence her handle on Gmail, Domer Mom. And then what have we got next there real quickly? I think we've got another, and then Catherine on the right-hand side there. Clearly, Dad, you have given back to your community in a way that no other citizen in the city of Farmington Hills history probably has. For that, we're incredibly proud. And I know that, I'll let you kind of rattle off your lifelong motto, but I will tell you that in addition to that, always came, how many sales calls did you make today? But in terms of your kind of closing remarks on what you stand for, what your motto is, share that with us, and then I'd love to give this really wonderful audience an opportunity to ask you some questions. You've got grandkids on, you've got great grandkids on, you've got friends and family, you've got family of friends. We, as the Anhut family, really thank all of you for participating in this. But Dad, wrap it up with your life's advice.
Okay. When we acquired the Botsford Inn, we purchased it from the Ford family, Ford interests. Henry Ford had met his wife at a square dance, Botsford, and that was how he got involved. And they treated it as what I'd say a very closed-held tea room approach. Well, when I got into it, I found out the cost of operating it, even cutting the lawn, taking care of the landscaping, was more than the business they were doing in 1 month. So I found out in a hurry that I had to go out and get business. What I found out was that, and I apply this today, is that personal touch, it still applies. I know today everybody likes computers. I still think that the personal touch takes over, eyeball to eyeball. And Chrissy, my daughter, used to take me, we'd go over onto 8 Mile Road, and we'd work from, say, Beck Road all the way to 8 Mile Road. I got to the point that I knew every business, I knew everybody, all the top people in all those businesses. And that what taught me, number one, you gotta have passion. Number one, you gotta make cold calls and don't give up. Won't fail if you never give up, was my motto. And I've carried that on. Even today, I'm still with the Economic Development Corporation of Farmington Hills. And I've been with that since 1978. And I noticed that I got my pal, Mike Flanagan here, who by golly was the best school superintendent we ever had. And I see Chris Gregg smiling, and she's, by God, she's a great Democrat. I'm gonna make her a Republican. Former minority speaker of the House. And you did a great job, Chris. And God love you. But anyhow, I know that you just gotta work. You gotta work. And
Well, you certainly exemplify
passion. It's all about passion.
And you certainly exemplify the spirit of Notre Dame. And Jessica, if you'd like, I think that we'll give we'll put Dad on the stand. I guess maybe we'll invert the law school conversation here and make him respond to some questions that others may have about here, about Notre Dame back in the 1940s, about football recruiting, anything and everything at Notre Dame.
Jessica, can I just say, since John used my name in vain here, I became an okay superintendent, but I need to tell you that was my first superintendency, late 80s, early 90s, and I made some bad mistakes. I mean, I was over my head. I really didn't know much about what I was doing, and I got into a tiff with a guy named Headley in public. It became a kind of a problem. And he had just run for governor and lost, and he owned a big company in town. And at any rate, John invited me over to lunch at Botsford and kind of had my back. And, I probably because I was Notre Dame, I don't know, whatever it was, I probably wouldn't have lasted the rest of the time there, John, without your advice and help. Really appreciate it to this day.
Thanks.
I should say we were on the Botsford Hospital board together, and I forgot to say this when I first met him. I mean, he scared the hell out of me. He's kind of got this grumpy voice a little bit, and then you find out later he's a kind-hearted guy, means the best in the world for you. But boy, I sat there. I don't think I said a word at that lunch. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Judge Frank, it looked like you had a question.
Yes. Hey, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. I'm Judge Frank Szymanski, but I'm not I'm like well, my dad was Judge Frank Szymanski, and he went to school.
Very well.
with you. Do you remember? Did you know him? Can you share anything about Frank?
He's the toughest center that ever played for Notre Dame. I remember when he recruited him. He invited me to have a drink one night. That started it.
Yeah.
Great guy, became a great judge.
Well,
Boy, he was tough.
well, I think he shared your sense of service and instilled that in us. There's 7 of us, and 2 of us went to Notre Dame. 2 of us that went to Notre Dame and became judges. My brother Dave too. My brother Mike's on the call here tonight too. And also, when I was at Notre Dame, I played hockey with Greg Collins, and I saw he was one of the players you helped bring to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great story too. Greg Collins, yes.
Yeah, well, like I say, it's great to hear that. And, you're probably one of the few people on earth that can tell us something about our dad in college, because, it's a long time ago.
I guess it's time to rewrite some history, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, hey, John, I've got a question for you. Great to see you, and kind of eyeball to eyeball, but boy, when you got a phone call from John Anhut to make a donation for the local golf outing, you better believe you did it. So thanks for all the work you've always done in the community. But question for you about when they allowed women at Notre Dame, and obviously your daughter attended, but did you have any reservations about the university making that big change?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, watch how you answer that question, Dad.
You owe me a lunch, by the way.
I sure do.
But certainly, Dad, your daughter Chris was in the first girls' class to graduate from Notre Dame, as I recall.
That's correct.
Yep. He's not going to say that about girls being allowed, because I'm sure he was happy about it. So
when I was there, the only woman that was on campus was in the cafeteria. They called her Miss Mojo Sin. That's as far as we got.
Well, my dad told me he didn't think it was maybe a place for girls to go, and so that sealed the deal that I was going to go no matter what.
do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is Pat Sarb, class of 76, and born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan. And my dad was class of 48, but born in 1923, the same year you were, John. And I was fortunate to play for ERA on the 73 championship team, but I'm looking at the names you brought to university with John Siskowski and Greg Marks, Greg Collins, Drew Mahalik, and that were members of that team back in the early 70s. And, obviously the Detroit area was very productive in being part of those teams for ERA. And I didn't realize until now, you didn't recruit me, so I guess I wasn't as good as but, we went to, Sacred Heart was a small school in the Detroit Catholic League out in Dearborn, but had some great memories of those guys that you helped bring to the university. Thank you.
Tell them a story about Greg Marks and Michigan State.
Okay.
Michigan State people.
You mentioned Greg Marks. I was involved in the recruiting. There was a fellow named Waddy Spolstra who used to write for the Detroit News, I believe. He called me one day and he said that, there's a kid over at Catholic Central. His name is Greg Marks. You ought to take a look at him. I had also a connection there with a fellow named Gerbig, who played center on the Catholic Central team that year. And they also were friend of the Smarts. One thing led to another. Well, I got involved, and they said, I got to hold of Notre Dame, and they said, well, we need tackles. We'll take a look at them. Well, it got to the point that he was offered a scholarship. In those days, May 1st was the key day on recruiting. Johnny Pinelli got hold of me and said, boy, he said, Duffy Doherty is looking for this kid. He said, we better get him away. We can't find him. So I said, well, why not put him up here at the inn? Well, we did. We got him, and I got him with Siskowski, by the way, who was playing for UDI at that time. I got him at the inn. That night, about maybe 10 o'clock, when I was finishing my dinner, a gal who was my hostess came and said, Mr. Anhut, there's a big fellow at the front desk who wants to see you. I went to the front desk and I recognized him. His name was George Perlis. And he started giving it to me. In fact, he started giving me the old finger treatment, everything. He's a big guy, so I thought, well, I'm not gonna fool this guy. Well, he says, Duffy sent me after that kid Marks, and they tell me you know where he is. And I said, who? He said, Marks. I said, I said, I've heard of that guy. He said, well, I hear you know where he is. And finally, I got rid of Perlis. Just as I did, right down the staircase into the lobby comes Greg Marks and Siskowski. I said, well, that took care of that. That was my experience with Greg. And of course, he went on to be two-time All-American, as you probably know. Unfortunately, he's gone now. It's pathetic, but he's gone. But what an experience.
So any other last minute quick questions? The history is amazing. We love hearing Dad's stories.
Grandpa, I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Cool,
Can you
look.
see me?
Who's that?
Oh, there's my Georgia guy.
Well, I wasn't gonna reference the Georgia graduate. I know we've handed you a couple of losses over the past few years, so I wasn't gonna mention that, but you did. My dad has the Sparty background too, so I don't want to get into the other universities with this one, but I want to put you on the spot. What is the best Notre Dame football team you've seen, and why do you think they were the best?
I'd have to say, oh boy, here I go.
On the spot.
But number one, I'd have to say it would have to be the team after World War II. That would be when Johnny Lujak played Army to a 0-0 tie in New York. And that's when the players played both ways, offense and defense. And Lujak was the big star, but we had great linemen, everything. That would be the team, I would say. That'd be 1950.
1940 probably, right?
It'd be 46, I guess.
Okay.
It was 1946.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. My name's Terry Meter. My dad played on that team.
Oh, wow. Wow.
With Ziggy Zarowski.
Who's that?
My name is Terry Meter, M-E-T-E-R. My dad, Bernie Meter, would have been at school with
Oh,
me.
I remember him very well.
Did you? Yeah, he played on that 46 team.
Sure. By God, and I picked the right one.
I'm going to email Jessica a link to an old vaulted article from Sports Illustrated, and it's done by one of their great writers, Zimmerman, I think it was. And he poses the question, what was the greatest Notre Dame team of all time? And he makes an argument between 46 and 47. So I'll send that link to Jessica and she can distribute it.
Thank you, Patrick.
Good question. Very good.
Well, Jessica, we're at the top of the hour. I will turn the microphone back to you. And again, on behalf of the entire Anhut family, we're flattered that you've offered our father this opportunity, but most importantly, we're so very proud of him and his relationship with Notre Dame.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Why don't we do a round of applause, really, just for you? Thank you all so much for coming. And
Let me give you my favorite toast. May your happiest days of yesterday be your saddest days of tomorrow. Thank you for hearing me. I'm flattered.
Thank you, John.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was great.
Thank you, John.
Want to say anything else?
What?
Jessica, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I can't top that.
Jessica,
Yes.
just keep those directors working. One time we sold out the Latin Quarter to 1,400 for a universal Notre Dame night dinner. You gotta make them work.
Okay.
And thanks for everything you do.
You've laid the groundwork. You laid the groundwork.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you again. Thank you again.
Good to see you, John.
All right.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Go Irish.
Night.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.
Night. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Here.
Love you, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, these people, well, she watching. Bye, Mike. Good to see you, Mike George. Thank you. Gene DiAgostino. Say hello to him.
Yeah.
Hi, Jerry. Is it Jerry? Hi, Jerry. How are you? Thank you.
Where's Jerry?
Jerry Teagan.
I'm there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Jerry.
How you doing, John? Good to see you.
Thank you.
There's Jim Spag. How are you?
There he is.
How you doing?
There's Jim Spagnuolo right there, Dad.
Yeah.
Mr. Anhut,
Yep.
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. God, I love your father.
My brother and I would like to take you out to breakfast or dinner or something and just talk over old times.
Okay. Wants to take you out to breakfast or dinner and talk
That
over
would
old
be
times.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And Jim, I don't know if you heard his comment or not.
My mother said to say hello to you. She just turned 100 this year.
Oh,
What?
God.
Oh my gosh, really? Congratulations. Tell her happy. Wow.
Go.
Amazing. Wow.
No.
Well, you take care. God bless you, and I'll give you a buzz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Botsford Hospital, eh?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Wow.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Neat. 100. Wow. Hi, Jean. There's Jean DiAgostino up there. How are you? Thanks for being there.
That's a big guy.
Yep.
Gino.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
Thank
huh?
you. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
God bless.
Thank you.
Say bye to Jim. Thank Jim. There's Jim. Say thank Jim. Thanks for helping, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, no, Dad, what a great night. We're
Yeah.
so very proud of
What a
you.
great career you've had.
Yep.
Jim did a good job.
Had a good mentor.
Thanks, Karen. She's there. Thanks, Karen. Karen's over
Good
there.
night, Dad.
Karen.
Yep. Okay.
Karen's knitting
Shuffle
away.
your cards.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Make a grand slam, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Thanks again, Jessica.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And I just wrote Jim a note. You did a great job moving it along. It just was perfect. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay.
Very good.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, Jim.
Bye-bye.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye, everyone. I'm
Bye.
working it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Love you, Dad. Night.
Thanks, Jim.